So a friend of mine is finally getting his driver's license. He's younger than me, but has mostly lived in the city and used public transportation. But he recently got a job that requires him to have a car, so he's now taking driving lessons. Now, I've been driving since I was 15, so to me, it really just seems so easy to drive, but not for him. For him at this point, it just seems like endless laws. Laws about speed limits, right turn on red, wearing a seatbelt, not texting and driving, on and on and on. Now, we know that all of these laws have a purpose. They're intended to keep us safe and to make sure that traffic flows smoothly. Sadly, we know that not everyone obeys traffic laws, and we don't always obey them either. But love or hate them, laws are part of life. If we just keep in mind the reason for the laws, we'll be so much happier in life. So this is week 3 of our message series titled Hard Questions. And everybody I know has questions about God or faith or religion. So in this series, we're looking at 5 hard questions that are raised in the readings at Mass. So week 1, we answered the question, is God angry and vengeful? And we said no. But God does challenge the comfortable and comfort the challenged. Last week, Father Kennedy answered the question, who should be the boss of our lives, us or God? And obviously, it's God. Today's hard question is this: are we our brother's, our sister's keeper? Now, the average churchgoer hears this question and says, sure, I am my brother's and sister's keeper. I'm supposed to help others in need. But I'm going to push you to go just a little bit deeper to figure out who is your brother and sister. Why should you care about their problems? And how much do you need to help them? So let's turn to the readings. Now, in that gospel that we just heard, the Pharisees were once again testing Jesus. They were trying to trip him up. Now, if you want to really understand the Pharisees, who they were, and how they viewed God and faith, this number tells you everything. The Jewish people of Jesus' day were required to follow 613 laws. Rules that dictated every aspect of daily life. There were rules for what to eat and how to eat it. Rules for how to wash, how to dress. There was a rule for everything. And most of these rules contained the phrase, you shall not do this. Only occasionally would you find the instruction, you shall do this. And when it came to all of these rules, the Pharisees were in control. They alone could interpret them, explain them, and punish those who broke them. This gave them immense power over people's daily lives. So they were hoping to trap Jesus when they asked him which of the 613 laws is the greatest. Now, this was not a hard question, not by any stretch. This was a standard question that a Jewish teacher would be asked by his students, his disciples. You could even say it was a softball question. And Jesus answered with what we refer to as the Great Commandment. His answer would not have been surprising because every rabbi would have answered in the same way. The surprise came when Jesus said this. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Short, concise, and brilliant, but not easy to do. In fact, it's incredibly challenging. And in simplifying it and in joining the two commandments together, Jesus was teaching them and us, that the basis for every one of their rules and laws is to grow in love of God and others. And you have to do both. The two are linked. Love God and love your neighbor. The Pharisees lost sight of this connection, so they came up short in their love for others. Jesus wants to make sure that the same thing doesn't happen to us. So to return to today's hard question, are we our brothers or our sisters' keeper? Meaning, are we responsible for other people? Are we obligated to love and care for them? For those who make poor choices? How about those who belong to other races, religions, nationalities? Those who don't look like you, live like you, worship like you? In today's first reading from the book of Exodus, the answer is clear. It leaves no doubt. We heard this: you shall not molest or oppress an alien. You shall not wrong any widow or orphan. Aliens is another term for foreigners or immigrants. Widows and orphans represent the most vulnerable among us. Thousands of years ago, there weren't senior living facilities or orphanages or charities. The only way for someone facing hardship to survive was through the generosity of others. And it is this tradition Jesus was recalling when he said, love God with everything you've got and love your neighbor as yourself. So the simple answer to today's hard question is yes. Yes, we are our brothers and sisters' keeper. I'm responsible for you and your well-being, and you're responsible for mine. And not just you and me, but everyone, whether they're related to us or not. Because what Jesus teaches is that we're all children of one God, which makes us all brothers and sisters. If you profess that you love God, then prove it. Show me. Produce the evidence by loving others. What keeps us from doing as Jesus asks? I think the biggest thing is judgmentalness. We get judgy. We decide that only some individuals or some groups are worthy or deserving of our help. We get judgy with that person standing at the traffic light begging for money. We judge the immigrant family at our southern border, fleeing a life of poverty and violence. We judge the family member who can't seem to ever get his or her act together. Another thing that can keep us from doing what our faith demands is stinginess. We carefully measure out our generosity and only give to those we decide are worthy or those who will express their appreciation to us for helping them. St. Francis de Sales has a great quote that speaks to stinginess. He said this: "The measure of our love is to love without measure." The measure of our love is to love without measure. This means we should give generously, without keeping a tally, without deciding if someone is worthy or thankful. Just give as much as we can, as often as we can. Obviously, no one person can do everything. The needs will always outweigh our ability to respond. But respond we must. Because if we succumb to these attitudes of judgmentalness or stinginess, we close the door of our hearts, which takes us down the slippery slope of the Pharisee, judging anyone who is not perfect, anyone whose life is messy, anyone who is not following all of the rules. And one of the best ways to avoid the trap of the Pharisee, or to escape its hold if you find yourself there now, is to be more generous with others, more generous with the people in your life, your family, friends, and neighbors, and more generous with other groups and individuals who need your help. For the past few weeks, our parish has been collecting supplies for the people of Honduras. Everything donated is being packed up this Sunday to be sent to Honduras for our next mission trip in January. I'll be attending the January mission trip along with several members of our parish and other parishes. And during our time in Honduras, we will provide care for thousands of individuals, men, women, and children, some of the poorest of the poor. They are some of the most vulnerable, who have no other means of care. This weekend, we're also beginning our Thanksgiving outreach called Families Helping Families, and you'll hear more about that at the end of Mass. But every week, we provide opportunities for you to obey Jesus' commands in today's gospel, ways for you to show your love for God and others. And they are commands, not just nice ideas, not an option, not if you have some extra time in your schedule or extra money after you've bought everything you want. Generosity and sharing your material blessings must be a priority in the life of every disciple. It must be a priority in your schedule and your budget. Prioritizing means it needs to be among the first things you budget in, not the last. So I will close this message with this question for you to consider. What will you do this week to show your love of God and others? Let's pause for a moment to reflect on this question.